Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Soca Mom Summit. My name is Eva Wilson from SocaMom.com, and we're really glad that you chose to hang out with us. We have a very, very timely topic. We have Mara Clarke to talk to us about co-parenting and COVID-19 and how to navigate custody and more, because there is more, during a lockdown. Now, we're going to jump right into it in a second, but first we need to know a little bit about you. So tell us about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Mara Clarke. I am a family lawyer in Ontario, Canada. Specifically, I practice in the areas of Toronto and Durham region, and I do a little bit of work in the remainder of the GTA. I was called in 2008. I attended Osgoode Hall Law School. My background is in legal information. So prior to starting my family law practice, I worked exclusively as the director of outreach for an organization that taught people about the law, and specifically vulnerable youth communities. And so we would do things like mock trials and youth police dialogues and family law information sessions. But that work was really around not only just learning the law, but also gaining the skills and understanding and tools to be able to effectively use the law in your daily life. And in that work, I did a lot of work with young parents and specifically young mothers and young fathers that were living in supportive housing environments. And that's where I really got connected with and found my love for family law. And so I transitioned from that into my own practice, working with those audiences. My work is primarily domestic, which is things like custody, access, divorce, equalization of property. And that's my practice exclusively is in family law. So I don't dabble in any other areas. And I'm really enjoying it.
My dad, well, he's retired now, but he was a family lawyer. And I never understood how, you could separate what happens at work and then go home and go to sleep. I'm like, it takes a special person to be able to do that and to deal with all the families are so different. So I commend you for being able to deal with all of that. It's a lot, and be a parent. Like that's the kicker right there. So let's start talking about co-parenting and COVID-19. Right now, most of the world is on like a stay-at-home order. And so first, tell me what that means generally for people who are sharing custody.
Okay. So, and when I speak really of the Ontario law and the Ontario experience. I always start out these sorts of sessions in encouraging people that are viewing to get legal advice based on their particular circumstances in the jurisdiction that they live. So in your state, in your province, in your parish, you need to speak to not any lawyer, you need to speak to a family lawyer in that area, because I've actually even seen myself, people that are practicing other areas of law, giving legal information right now about family law and it being absolutely wrong. So you need to speak to a family lawyer in your area. And this information that I'll share with you today is general information. It is not legal advice. So you can't go and say, oh, well, Mara said A, B, C, and D, because family law is so subjective. It's looking at your particular facts and the way that those facts are presented. And so, the considerations that I am having the facts might differ than your particular situation. So you definitely want to speak to a lawyer before you do anything. With regards to the question about how COVID-19 is impacting custody situations and how that relates to stay in place or shelter in place orders. So the court has been clear that court orders should be followed. Shelter in place does not supersede a court order, and the courts have been very clear about that. Now, you should still follow any social isolation or personal isolation or distancing protocols. And of course, there are exceptions. So if you have traveled, for example, in Ontario, if you've traveled, you're required to actually more like quarantine yourself for 14 days. So in that 14-day quarantine, you probably would not have access because quarantine means that you stay away from all other people. That is different than practicing social distancing. Okay. Isolation and quarantine is different than distancing.
Yes.
Distancing is what everybody should be doing right now to flatten or rid us of this this pandemic. However, isolation is different. So, for example, we traveled prior to everything, popping off. We traveled to the Dominican Republic. My family's from Jamaica, but I often take vacations to other Caribbean places, and we went to the DR for a little vacation. We came back. We then were subject to 14 days of quarantine. Wow. Or self-isolation, family isolation. In that period, if I had an access order, I would not be exercising access with my child, because the theory or the understanding is that the virus takes that amount of time to actually show any symptoms and run its course. So you don't want to be exposing people, whether you're asymptomatic or not symptomatic. You don't want to take any risk. So in that time, there would have been no custody if I had there'd be no access if I had an access order or parenting time order in place. However, me and my partner would be talking about, okay, well, what do we do after the 14 days? Is there something that we can do for makeup access? Can we expand and cover off the time that I missed? Because it's still in the best interest of the children and the child to have a relationship and have the time with both parents, especially in these times of uncertainty when everything else is changing.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of times you think, oh, this thing is never going to cover everything, but that does make a lot of sense. That the best interest of the child, it's important. So when you have some parents that are, arguing, beefing about something else, and they want to use this situation to, get back at another person or whatever, what kind of thoughts do you share with them? I'm not going to say advice. What kind of thoughts do you share with them?
So the court has also been very clear that people cannot falsely claim that they have COVID-19 to avoid following a parenting time order. In an unrelated case, there was actually an employee that used that excuse to get out of work, and she was charged because of the impact that it had in, even like for her employer having to shut down business and clean the store and everybody having to go in, all of her coworkers having to go into isolation. So it's not something to be played with. If you have a symptom, because the symptoms might look like other things. For example, it's also, spring, and with allergies, you might have some coughing. If you have a symptom, you want to do an assessment online, and then you want to speak to a doctor. You can call. There are many services in Ontario specifically that the doctor will call you back. So they're not doing in-person visits, but you can speak to a doctor. You can explain the symptoms, report, and then if you were going to if you had a an access order, a parenting time order that you think needed to be revised because of the symptoms that you or the child are demonstrating, then you have a conversation about it. You call the other parent and you say, listen, this is what's going on. This is what the doctor told me to do. If the parent...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
But they came up with these things just for this quickly, like legislation moves that quickly. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's changing. And it's changing daily, right? Like we really went from a place where the courts were, when I left on the 12th of March, courts were in operation. They were hearing everything. When I came back, I came back because the Prime Minister of Canada said Canadians should return home. And I thought, okay, we're going to end this vacation early and we're going to return home. And when I came home, the courts were not operating the way, like they were basically closed. And right now they're still open in Ontario to urgent matters. And in fact, as of April 6th, they have extended their services. So they're figuring out the new normal, and sort of what we're going to do in this interim period as well. But that's why parents really need to cooperate and
Yes.
be creative and focus on the child, and do not use this pandemic as the excuse to sort of forward your other goals, because it's just not the time and it's not in your children's interest.
Exactly. I think that some people are really, really, they're just doing too much. I don't even know how else to explain it, but they're like, I mean, this is not an opportunity, everybody. It's
No.
not.
No.
I mean, there are things you can get out of this that are positive, but that's not one of them. Retaliation is not one of them. So let's say you're in the middle of a divorce, right? And things were up in the air when all of this hit. Does the new legislation kind of supersede whatever was going on? Does that all get put on hold? What have you been seeing happening?
So it's not, it's I don't know that it's new legislation that's superseding what happens with, previously. There are some legislations that are coming out around COVID-19. So for example, in Ontario, we have, or in Canada, we actually have some federal and provincial funding. And so there's actually been laws drafted around that funding, and as emergency funding, and can you access it for child support purposes or whatever the case may be. However, if you had a matter that was in court, all of my matters that were not emergency, that were in court, are basically just stayed, which means that they're just holding them. And everything's just on pause.
Right.
And they're figuring out first, things are on pause. They're figuring out how to deal with the urgent stuff. And there's a test for urgency. Not everything is urgent. And then if you meet that test, then you submit documents different, like they've come up with practice directions so that you don't have to meet with your lawyer to get your signature on affidavits. We don't have to send a process server to the courts to file the materials. They've come up with all of that quite quickly. So, just accolades to our courts, because everybody's just spun on a dime, and I'm very proud of how they've been able to do that. But previous matters are just being held. However, that doesn't mean that you cannot get resolution, because family courts are really about negotiating and coming to an agreement. So even if you have a matter and you thought, okay, well, I had a court date coming up and all of those dates have been held, and I'm not going to go back to court for the, maybe probably till, in the summer, if not early fall or late summer, you can still make progress on your case. Talk to the other lawyer, talk to the lawyer. So if you're represented, you want to have your lawyer engage in negotiations with the other lawyer or the other side and see what agreements you can come to. Because the last practice direction on April 6th was that the courts were now processing consents. So if you've been arguing and perhaps you were close to resolution, and you needed a little judicial guidance, but now this COVID-19 has hit and you don't know when you're going to be back in court, think about it, reassess your position. Perhaps to utilize the time and the fact that everything has sort of come down a bit, and consider we need to continue to fight about these things, or can we come up with some sort of resolution? And if you do come up with a resolution, then those orders can be processed through what in Ontario is called a 14B motion on consent. So it's not that everything has stopped. I see a lot of things online where people think, oh, well, I don't have to follow my court order because the courts are closed. Not sure where you got that information, but that's wrong, specifically in the Ontario context. And I'm sure in other regions, the courts can't close. people are still being arrested. People's children are still being apprehended. People are still, at risk of somebody fleeing with a child or something like that. Like, the courts can't close. We are an essential service. So the courts aren't closed, and you do have to be very careful. And I get it. I get that it's scary. That, sometimes you're parenting with a partner that doesn't seem to be prioritizing the child's interest. Maybe they're not taking it seriously. Maybe they're still hanging out with their friends, and then they come and pick up your child for access, and you're terrified that they're going to expose your child. But if that is the case, you need to bring a motion. There are services out there to get you free legal advice. Specifically in Ontario, there's an emergency line that the Ontario Bar Association has set up in conjunction with the Law Society of Ontario, where you can call and figure out, based on your situations, for free, is your situation urgent? Can you do a motion on it? And if finances are an issue, you don't have to have a lawyer. But you have to make an attempt. You can't just unilaterally decide to change your court order and think that, oh, well, I was just doing it because of my child's safety. What if this thing's around for a year? Is your child not going to see their parent for a year?
For a year. I mean, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I hadn't even really thought about that. The amount of time that this could go on. So basically, don't just complain to your girlfriends and withhold the child. You need to take some action, and there is a place to go that is open to get it taken care of.
Yes. And so don't go to the courts. Like, don't just roll up.
Well, you can't leave.
You're not going to get in.
You can't
but you can call the court. You can, I will leave my contact information for those that are in Ontario, specifically in the Greater Toronto area. I will share the information about the Law Society's, Ontario's urgent service that you can call to figure out if your family law situation meets the test of urgency, and get some free 30 minutes of free legal advice from them, or legal information / advice from them. So there are places for you to figure this out, but that is not with your girlfriends or in an online chat room group where all non-lawyers are giving you all types of advice that are
Facebook
99%
law degree.
wrong. Hello, stop it.
Oh my gosh. So you're in Ontario. Now, you've got people who move around all the time. So since this is an international it's a pandemic. So if you have someone living in the US, borders have been closed. You have someone living in the Caribbean, they're not letting anybody in or out. What kinds of things can you do, or what kinds of issues have you seen that people should be thinking about, that they should be aware of? And what do those different international, pieces mean in a situation like this?
So, first of all, the court order remains supreme, right? So if you have a court order for access, and perhaps say you were in Michigan, Ontario, and the child lives in Detroit, the borders are closed, but they're not closed for essential travel. So I suspect that if you were traveling for access, you could get through the border. However, I believe that, on Ontario, once you travel, you have 14 days of self-isolation, right? So even that travel would be 14 days of self-isolation. So you're not going to be traveling to be able to exercise your access time if you're going for the day, to have access that day, and you're supposed to isolate for 14 days. And then you've got to isolate when you come home as well, which may not work if you're an essential worker and you need to go to work. So this is where people have to really be creative. What kind of technology can I use? Let's have a conversation about this so that we're both parents are on the same page. Maybe the parenting time or the access is going to be spent online right now. We're going to, do something like this, video conferencing. We're going to, I know my son, I downloaded for my children MSN Messenger. Messenger kids, Lord have his mercy. I'm sorry, everybody that has gotten calls from my 3-year-olds just sitting there talking about, hi, didn't know how that was going to turn out. But there's technological solutions, right? And so maybe for the interim, you do some access or your parenting time via technology, and then you talk about, okay, when this eases, what is our plan for makeup time? And then you have those conversations with the children on the same page, because the kids need us to be working together right now.
Yes.
The kids need to have clear and positive messaging right now. And there are a lot of complications. The 2 jurisdictions of the international travel, borders being closed. I know that like some Caribbean countries are not letting anybody in. They may have exceptions for residents. However, then you still have, first of all, are planes even going? But secondly, then you still have the 14 days of the self isolation. So access in that scenario which you've provided is definitely going to be interrupted. I would say get on the page, think of some creative solutions, maybe do it more frequently. Maybe you were seeing them every 2 weeks on the weekend, but now you're not going to see them in person on the weekend. So you're going to call, every other night, and you're going to do a video chat, and you're going to read them a book, and you're going to, let them know that you're still there even in this time, and that mommy or daddy will see them again in person when everything sort of calms down a little bit. But parents need to work together and be creative, be resolution focused, and be child focused.
I love that. Just making sure that, because right now all of the kids are unsure of
it's a hot mess for them.
School's done, parks done, friends done. And for parents, adults, to be making things even more unsettling for them, it's unnecessary. Like, can y'all just put this on pause and start fighting when it's over? Like,
exactly.
Figure it out.
And I
being creative. That's a great idea.
And I want to shout out the parents that I have seen figuring it out. Like, schools are closed, and maybe your order doesn't say that you need to spend more time during the week, but the other parent the child was going to school, and now the other parent is maybe trying to work from home, and there's no daycare, there's no school, and they are having to also, do whatever online learning is happening. And it's a lot. So a big congratulations and a big, high five, daps to all of the parents that are actually stepping up and saying, you know what, I will take the kids every other day. I will assist with homework. I will do more parenting time. If you do have, some people say that they can't do it because they have to work, they're an essential service, but really that's just an excuse, because there are human rights legislations that say that an employer has to accommodate family circumstance. And so if you have children and the kids are out of school and don't have daycare, and you let your employer know that, they will be working with you and your schedule, especially during this time, to allow you to be able to assist with co-parenting responsibilities.
Because this is a really unusual time. Like this,
very unusual.
There's nothing in your employee manual to tell you how to deal with something like this. So I'm gonna wrap this up with, and I don't know if this is a long answer or not, but what kinds of documents should co-parents have on them that protect them and that protect the kids? Because what you don't want to have is, okay, well, she never told me that she was an essential service and she never picked up when she was supposed to pick up, or he never picked up when he was supposed to pick up. What kind of documents should everybody keep with them right now?
So I'm not sure how to answer that question, if I'm understanding the question correctly, but I'll answer to the best of my ability. I think you should have obviously a copy of whatever court orders are in place. Sometimes you get court orders in a series, so have a full understanding of the provisions. If you make any agreements for the interim, get that in writing. You both don't have to sign and get it witnessed in this time period, but get it in writing. Confirm with the other person, okay, so this is what we're doing, so that we make sure that everybody's on the same page. I would say that if you don't have a will, this is a perfect time to think about getting a will. I know that they've changed the actual rules to allow people to get wills from distance. Listen, COVID-19 does not discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're young or you're old. It doesn't matter if you're Black or you're white. It doesn't matter if you're from a hot country or from a cold country. We need to get our orders in place. If you don't have life insurance, these are the things that you want to be working on. I don't want to see the GoFundMes because this person passed away from COVID-19. We are past that as a people. We need to get our ducks in a row and get everything in place. So those are the sort of documents that I would think of. There's no travel right now, so it's not like you can travel consent letters and those sorts of things, but your court orders, and then start thinking about, okay, your legal health. How do you have a will in place? Do you have life insurance in place? Those sorts of documentation I would also be looking at this time.
So as far as, let's say there's been an agreement to video chat more often during the week, is there something that they should have written up saying this is the substitute for in-person time? So you can't come back and take me to court and say I haven't been keeping up with my end of the bargain.
Yeah, like a good faith agreement, even if you say, okay, for this period of time, because you can't have in-person access, even if it's by email, we're going to do video access. This is the schedule. Not only just to say cover your butt, but also so that there's clarity. Somebody's going to say, oh, I thought you said every other day, and you actually said it was going to be Tuesday and Thursday. Well, you'll see that if you have it in writing. You'll see that you're not on the same page. So that allows there to be clarity, but also it allows that protection if that issue was to rear its head later on.
Got you. So, wow. So I hope everyone took notes and took them so they can take them to their own attorney, because like she said, jurisdictions are different. Terms are different. Laws are changing daily in Ontario. So who knows what's happening in your city, your state. I live in the city with Lori Lightfoot, so I don't know what day she's gonna nail my door shut. I have absolutely no idea. So things are changing in municipalities all over the place. So make sure you check with your local family attorney. Please don't call your friend who does patents. It's not the same. It's not the same. So thank you for joining us. I will get the links from you that people can use to help themselves and then kind of get some ideas so they can take them to their own attorney or to their own, help that's in their local area. So they kind of have an idea of what could be going on and what's coming down the pipe, because apparently you guys are ahead of everybody. I'm a little upset. You guys are moving. I don't, we'll get there. Let's hope.
We'll all get there.
We will. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you for this information was wonderful. And I remember, I think you did a presentation for Black Moms Connection a few years ago. And I was like, she is so down to earth and no nonsense. This is what we need during COVID-19. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
Thank you so much for having me. I think at that presentation that you're talking about, the takeaway was bona fide upon verbal agreement. It remains the same today. If you change your access order, or change your access plan, you're going to video conference or whatever, again, bona fide upon verbal agreement. Write it down. You'll have the clarity and nobody will say, oh, I thought it was this or I thought it was that.
That's right.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for providing this summit. I look forward to attending the other panels, and I want everybody to keep safe and follow those court orders.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, you want to learn more about her, please go to socamomsummit.com. The links will be there. Can't say that it'll be right now, but the links will be there shortly, and we'll get you the information that you need. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.